Welcome. So today we're going to be talking about optimizing your transition into coaching. This is such an important topic because oftentimes we come in with a background that we might have been giving advice or guidance. And also the brain is wired to help and give advice. So sometimes learning coaching, this approach of I'm here to support your wisdom. I'm not here to advise you or tell you what to do, can feel very foreign to a lot of people. So I've asked Dori to join me today because she has an excellent perspective on this. So I wanted to open up a conversation around it. And Dori, would you mind starting off by sharing your story about your coach training experience and your experience of transitioning into that coach mentality and out of corporate?
Happy to, Laurel. It was kind of fun when we started having this conversation. Yeah, I mean, I've been coaching now for 18 years, and I had a coach when I was in corporate for about 13 years. I was in corporate for about 20 years. And, like a lot of academics too, people coming out of scientific backgrounds where there's an expectation that you know the answer. And in corporate, oftentimes there was an expectation that we knew the answer, we were going to handle it, or we get back to you right away. And so when I went through coach training, at the time it was with the Coactive Training Institute, CTI, and our process for certification was lengthy, and we had 9 supervisor sessions. And the supervising coach would listen to our coaching example that we sent them and ask us typically to rate ourselves, and then they'd also rate us on a scale of 0 to 10. And then, of course, there'd be a lot of discussion around it. And it's hard for me, especially as a 3 in the Enneagram, it's hard to say this, but I never got higher than, well, I shouldn't say that. For the first half of the process, I didn't ever get higher than a 2 out of 10, which was super humbling. It gets your attention. I don't think I ever scored higher than a 6 by myself or them the entire supervisory time. Also super humbling. And the thing I had to learn from that, or the thing that they wanted me to learn, was that my job as a coach is not to advise or consult. It's not to have the answer. It's to listen, it's to ask questions, and it's to help my clients get into the answer themselves. What's their answer from the inside out? I remember complaining about this to my husband. I said, a lot of my clients hire me for consulting or for advice or for my stories or whatever. And while that was true, he said to me, listen, your job is to learn about coaching, learn CTI's method, understand the core competencies that the ICF requires, and demonstrate that you get all that. And at the very least, at this stage in the game, that's your job. And if down the road it makes sense to bring other skill sets into the mix, great, but not right now. That's not your job. And so that was helpful. And I really focused the rest of my time on trying to learn how to do this thing that was so vital. Yeah.
Yeah, I can really relate. Also, being a mentor coach, having listened to hundreds of coaching sessions, I can say that there's value in learning peer coaching, because then you know when to add something in and when to not add something in, right? But until we learn how to really just show up in service of the client, I think that line can be very confusing or misread. So that's fascinating.
Yeah. And the group, I mean, if we've spent, like I was 20 years in corporate, if you spend 20 years, working a groove in the brain, it takes some time to focus on building another groove and letting that one atrophy a little bit. And what I want to say to all, young coaches in training, especially people coming out of leadership roles, corporate positions, academicians, even therapists who are in that kind of transition, that trust this process and trust yourself. You're not going to abandon all the stuff you've already learned and know and have done and can bring to the table. But if you can really surrender to this process and allow yourself to be a beginner and learn this way, you'll benefit significantly. One of the, I like to say, one of the upsides of aging is discernment. And a big part of my coaching as a depth coach, as a soul coach, and a leadership coach is in helping people to see all the nuanced little things that can suddenly change a life dramatically and significantly. And we can't do that if we're always poised with an answer, or we always think we know the right next direction or whatever. We really have to rein ourselves into. Very, very important. And then here's what I also learned is, because I wasn't out of corporate, and I still do some corporate stuff, and I still have consulting gigs, is that inevitably a lot of the consulting work or that type of work, or even that role as a parent or in a partnership with my husband, the outcomes are inevitably better when I'm more coach-like in my approach to any of these engagements. And I'm more curious, I'm asking powerful questions, and then I'm shutting up and listening. The outcomes are inevitably better. And we live in a world, like in a corporate setting, when I have my corporate clients, or at home, where people want more responsibility, more engagement, more initiative, more leadership from every seat. And in truth, we can't have that if it doesn't come from the inside out. It has to be intrinsic. And coaching is one of the only methodologies I know that helps other people stay in ownership and in responsibility and have a direct relationship with what they want and making it happen. So I'm very, very grateful to the 3 supervisors I had for those 9 sessions, because that whole experience was a massive defining moment, not just in my coaching career, but in my life.
It reminds me too, the number one thing that I've learned from coaching, from being a coach, is that on the spectrum of human potential, there's a leg of the journey that we could be shown the way. There might be answers that we find in books, teachings, mentors, counseling, you name it.
Yeah.
But there's another part of the journey to our potential that can only come from when we go within, and those answers start to come from within us. And that's coaching. Like you said, I don't know any other modality that can support someone through that leg of their life and that journey.
Yep.
So as we were talking the other day, you had mentioned there was a passage in The Seeker's Guide by Elizabeth Lesser. And would you mind sharing that with us? It's called The Beginner's Mind.
Yeah. Yes, I'd love to. Because it's always helpful for me to be reminded of this on a regular basis myself. It's part of what makes life fun, even at 60, for me. And I think it's a part of what makes coaching sacred. And like with our clients, especially with high-powered people who've been around the block a few times too, to be able to relax into the coaching relationship and allow yourself to be held, and be part of the holding with your coach is also powerful. And if you can tap into this beginner's mind, it will help that come sooner. So here's the passage. I once overheard my oldest son, Ram, then 6, speaking with his best friend. They were in the bathtub together, the only place I knew to put the 2 of them after a sad and trying day. This was the day that my own best friend, whose little boy was now in the bath, had finally given in to a long battle with cancer and died. Where's your mom? I heard my son ask his friend. She's dead. I know, but where is she? I don't know. I'm going to ask my dad tomorrow. I imagine that religion sprung from this kind of exchange. In my mind's eye, I can see 2 cave people, as in a Far Side cartoon, standing over the body of a friend and pantomiming a similar conversation. Children and early peoples share a purity in their search for the meaning of our existence. Indeed, in their original intent, all spiritual traditions aimed to answer bare-bones questions about birth and death. As we search for the very meaning of spirituality in our own lives, it is best to begin very, very simply, in the same wide-open manner as children or cave people. Children learn because they have no shame about being bare beginners. It's almost worth reading again. Children learn because they have no shame about being bare beginners. They ask, does the sky stop? And what does God look like? Or when Jesus said, lest ye become as little children, ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven, he was referring to this kind of guileless questioning. In their unaffected, optimistic curiosity, little children are models for spiritual seekers. The Zen master, Shunryu Suzuki, called this unaffected curiosity beginner's mind. If we want to fashion a spiritual path for ourselves, it is best to begin at the beginning with beginner's mind. Now, I know we're not a spiritual organization per se, we're a coaching school. But what I also believe is when we start to turn our attention inward, that is in part a spiritual journey. An analogy I like to use is the mother of 4 boys, with a lot of my, especially really strong, high-powered clients who are in big, high-powered positions and in professional settings, and they're also now training to be coaches. Is the analogy of an infant learning to walk, right? I mean, when let's say a 9-month-old child starts cruising the furniture and falls, you don't hear them saying, oh my God, I'm such a failure and I'm such an idiot and I can't believe I can't do this and I don't have the answers. And oh my, you don't hear that coming out of the child. They just get up again. They try it again and they try it again and they try it again until they get it. And that's kind of what we're asking our students to do, is to be that infant learning to walk.
Right. And so would you mind sharing the second part to that story?
The reading about beginner's mind?
Yeah.
Yeah. And before I do, just, for me, some of my signature work is parts work and voices. And we're really looking for all the barriers between us and who we are at the core of our being. And so, but the goal isn't to shed all the personas and identities necessarily. It's to have awareness for them and a conscious relationship with them, and then to be able to move past and through them to the core of our being. So that's a big part of our work, right? That's what integrative intelligence is about, right? So beginner's mind is a part of that journey. It's an essential tool in the toolbox for that journey. So here's that paragraph. So if you drew a long line and put modern cynicism at the start and beginner's mind at the end, you'd have a map for the contemporary spiritual pilgrim. Somehow our culture has evolved to the point where pessimism has become synonymous with intelligence, and where an overload of information is mistaken for knowledge. Admitting that we don't know something doesn't come easily to a modern person. And that's exactly what we're asking people to do, right? Voicing innocence and a sense of wonder is difficult for many of us. It can only mean that we've read too many Hallmark cards. But children are not sentimental, nor are they lacking in intelligence. Rather, they are unafraid to admit their status as a beginner. To say to the world, I don't know, please show me. This doesn't mean that to be spiritual is to remain a child or to take on the trappings of indigenous, less industrialized cultures. Beginner's mind is about discovering the essence of our humanness, the pure water of the inner heart, before it was clouded by conditioning.